Peace and light, that old guy Australia coming to you from the south coast. A bit chilly this morning, very chilly in fact. But the wind's not so strong out here. Absolutely howling a gale yesterday and again on the coast this morning. But anyway, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification button. Please like, share, subscribe. I've hit 450 subscribers. I'm absolutely blown away. It's not 4.5 million, it's not 450,000, it's not 4,500, but 450 is phenomenal. It's way more than I ever in my wildest dreams imagined I would have. And thanks to every single one of you. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'll do a message on that later on. But I wanted to address a pretty tricky subject this morning, and I'll be very careful what I have to say on this. And just remember, what I say is my truth. It's not the truth, it's my truth. Okay? So don't get hung up too much. And you're willing to debate me on anything, I'm happy to discuss. And, we'll see how it goes from here. Now, you'd have to be under a rock not to know of the shootings that happened in Queensland recently. And straight off the bat, I'll say, the loss of life was tragic on both sides. The mere fact that the situation occurs, however it may have occurred, is absolutely tragic for everybody and the families involved. And that's just this close to Christmas, or any time really, but this close to Christmas, really tough, really, really tough. And it's just horrible, really, really horrible. And if indeed there were some factors involved that would in some way paint a bad picture of the government or those in positions of power, then the blame will have to fall squarely on their heads, and that'll have to be exposed in due time. But if not, all we know at the moment is people are calling this a red flag event, and the reason they're saying it is because it raises a lot of questions that are not being answered, and it's coming out more and more every single day. But we have to be very, very careful what we say, and I would urge people just to back off and just take a little time before your keyboard warrior or post stuff or share things. Just remember, every single thing you do is monitored. Even my videos, everything's monitored. So you need to be careful what you do and say. You would have seen on the news, I don't watch it, but I get sent information and clips and things, that, those who are speaking out against the narrative, and we're not just talking the shooting, we're talking any narrative that the government has, to do with bugs or whatever, they're all being portrayed as part of this collective. And it's because we know we're a one-cell, one-brained animal. The government will tell you that we have no brain of our own, and the people who belong to these groups are really radical people, despite the fact that they're scientists and doctors and lawyers and, politicians, you name it. They don't allow the public to think along those lines. They just tar everybody with the one brush, and that seems to work. And they know how to do that kind of indoctrination. They've known it for decades, and they use it really, really well, highly successfully. So I'd urge people to be very careful what they post and what they say, particularly this time. And given the fact that we know exactly where this is going, we know the agenda they're trying to create, the situation they need to create, to bring about the legislation they want to implement. And we know what that implementation will mean, and we know what that legislation will be. So it's no surprise to us, let's say, that this event has occurred. It's no surprise. In fact, most of us have been waiting for something like this, knowing full well it was coming in the hills. You could hear the drumming. And it's terrible. It really is terrible on all sides. And there's many questions that are just not being addressed by the media. They've got blood in the water. They're circling. They will go at this for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And we know that they're pushing an agenda. They've told to push this agenda. They will continue to push that agenda. And then there'll come a time when the police commissioner will come out, or a government minister, or the Prime Minister, and say that they've been in discussions and they're going to implement new legislation, which we know has been written ages ago, and they just had to have a situation where they could implement that legislation, and we know what that's going to be. We know that everything's narrowing down, like the beam's narrowing and narrowing and narrowing, and at the end of it, where the point hits and it burns, that's the social credit score system and the digital pass. We know that. That's what this is all racing towards. Everybody knows that, and that's where we're heading towards. On the 31st of January 2023, Premier McGowan in WA will introduce the digital pass into WA. They're the first state to do so, and you will not be able to enter a hotel, a club, a restaurant, or a cafe without the use of the digital pass. And we know that the day will come when that becomes for things like food stores, like whether it be Woolies or Aldi or Coles or IGA or whatever might be the case in your state. And when that situation occurs, we know the end is nigh, as they say, because that will be to weed out the conspiratorial-minded. Another thing they brought up when they were talking in derogatory terms, and you need to understand this, the police who were killed, and rightly so, will be painted as heroic victims, much loved and respected heroic victims, and rightly so. If indeed there was any kind of failure to adhere to protocols, then they were indeed victims, and in ways many of us may not want to discuss. Oh, wow. So many questions. So many questions. You know, it's quite interesting that when the story first broke, the police contradicted themselves in the first half an hour. It's just, it's like they can't even get their story straight. They just can't even get their story straight. And there'd be a few heads rolling behind the scenes and a bit of face slapping going on. And they contradicted themselves in the first half an hour, and that kind of got everybody going. Whether it was a deliberate thing to fuel the furor, possibly, which is why I tell people to just back away. This is not going to end well. We know where it's going, and we've seen on the TV they're talking about domestic terrorism, and even people like influencers like Dave O'Neill's name has come up on the screen behind the TV presenter. So we know where they're heading with this. We know what's going on. But one of the issues they brought up was Port Arthur as a way to make these people, appear to be absolute nut jobs and conspiracy theorists and conspiratorially minded and da-da-da-da. And I have to say, I can speak to people who are not, for want of a better term, truth seekers, just your average person in the street. And they have major doubts about Port Arthur. It's not just the truther community who are thinking this way. Everybody's thinking this way. There's so many. And Port Arthur, talk about a red flag event. I've spoken on Port Arthur extensively, written many, many posts on it, and discussed it with hundreds of people. And you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to understand the wrongdoings that occurred with the Port Arthur massacre. And an example for you would be that the main witness to the entire event was a woman called Wendy Skerr, who I followed closely and unfortunately never attended one of her seminars or lectures, but I wish I had have. I really do. She passed away somewhere between 2012 and 2016. But they were glad to see her gone. Wendy Skerr was a lady in the cafe who made the 000 call. Now, that 000 call has never been released. And as Wendy Skerr herself, not me, Wendy Skerr herself said in her lectures, in her talks, public talks, she travelled extensively trying to tell everybody what really happened at Port Arthur and how the police covered it up. And it was just horrendous. So Wendy Skerr says in the 000 call that there were 2 shooters. That's not me saying that. That's Wendy Skerr. She says that in the 000 call. When she's giving the information to the operator, she clearly claims there are 2 shooters. So she can see Martin Bryant, and then she talks about another person being shot further away on the other side, if you know Port Arthur, on the bay where the cafe is. Anyway. Wendy Skerr was never asked to give a statement by the Tasmanian police. Never. I mean, that in itself is just shocking. But what's worse is that they initiated a royal commission into the Port Arthur shooting, gathered it all together, did their findings to appease the people, and then put a 55-year suppression order on that information. A 55-year suppression order. And guess who was not called before the Royal Commission to give evidence? Wendy Skerr. Never gave evidence at the Royal Commission. The woman who made the 000 call. And so I could go into great detail about Port Arthur. I could tell you things that would just absolutely shock you and blow your mind. Really, really would. And thank you, Kath Gibson, for the book. I promised to return it to you, and I haven't, and I apologise. It's my own lax attitude, but I will. But Kath sent me a book, the author of which was one of the ones who investigated the death of Princess Diana, and his findings on the Port Arthur massacre were, don't even mention to me about conspiratorial. Once you look at the information and the absolute time, all the timestamps with everything that happened during the Port Arthur massacre and afterwards, as written by this author, it is absolutely mind-blowing. Just, you cannot look at it in the same light. You can't. And the ramifications of that, of course, are frightening. Really, really frightening. No two ways about it. So that's not a conspiracy theory. That's a major author and the lady who witnessed it. Both spoke against the narrative. So people are being labelled by this, and the media is still complicit in saying that, that these people are believing this kind of hoax that was perpetrated on the Australian public. So the language they're using to describe these people is horrendous. It is horrific, and it's hard to listen to. It hurts your ears to hear it. From deranged, that kind of stuff. And the heroic police and the deranged killers, the deranged cop killers. They've got no respect for those who were killed, including the supposed deranged cop killers. No respect for them. They don't think about them or their families at Christmas, or their children. Nobody. They don't think about anything. No. And there were so many questions yet to come about how they were killed, who shot who, And I only know one thing. There's only one truth that I know about this whole thing. Just one. And that's this. That we will never know the truth. That's the only truth I know. The truth will never come out. There'll be a truth, which will be the narrative that the MSM will push, and that the police will insist is the absolute story of how it unfolded. And the continual insistence, which is hurting my ears in every video I'm sent, of the police saying that absolute clear and concise and controlled protocols were followed before these officers went out there. I'm like, yeah, I can't believe that for a second, son. That's just not on. But because they push that. Whenever they push something really, really hard, you know full well there's something under there that's not right. But anyway, we know the legislations that are going to come about from this, and I'd urge you all to be very careful what you post and what you say, because let me tell you, everything's being monitored in ways that has never been before in the history of mankind. And this is all aimed towards one goal. So that's just my take on it all. Just back off. Don't get involved. Watch what you say. Watch what you read. Watch what you post. And just let things unfold for a little bit. Because there are a lot of people who are not involved in this, who are asking questions. There are some good people asking some questions. And those that will have to be answered. Okay? I'm off to Ellie's. I'm going to see if she'll make me a chai tea. Oh my God, on oat milk. It is just delicious. I've got a week to go. Or thereabouts, not even. Maybe 5 days. And I'll be heading back to Sydney, and then I'm going to do a video for you where I'm going to reveal some major new plans for that old guy. And I think they'll be pretty good. Peace and light, that old guy Australia. Please like, share, subscribe. share, subscribe. Please push the like button, notification button if you want to see any more. Take care.